All right, so hi everyone and welcome to our webinar. Before we start, let's take a minute to introduce ourselves and our companies. My name is Zev. I'm the VP of Marketing at Niagara Networks. I'm joined by Warren Kwok, the Director of Product and Solution Management at CyberAdapt, and James Hanson, the Global Director of Business Development and Technology Alliance at Niagara Networks. I will start with introduction of Niagara Networks, and then Warren will introduce CyberAdapt. So Niagara Networks, we founded, Niagara Networks was founded in 2017. We're self-funded and owned by Interface Masters Technology, parent company with over 20 years of experience. We are based in Silicon Valley and design, develop, and manufacture our entire range of network visibility solutions locally. In terms of customers, we have over 300 customers globally, including multinational service providers, large enterprises, government agencies. Our Technology Alliance program expanded substantially last year, and we now have over 30 cybersecurity and networking vendors that integrate our visibility solutions in mission-critical projects. In terms of offering, our solutions, visibility solutions are typically deployed in core networks as a mediation layer between networks and cybersecurity tools. And typically they help network and security operations with packet data visibility and network intelligence. With that, I will hand over to Warren to introduce himself and CyberAdapt. Go ahead, Warren.
Yeah, hi, thanks very much. Yeah, so Warren Kwok with CyberAdapt, looking after the product and solutions management, and in particular pre-sales, sort of engineering, sales engineering. So CyberAdapt, we're a cybersecurity technology provider. Our solution provides real-time automated network threat detection. We've had multiple years of experience in delivering this, our NTD solution, in particular to the small and medium enterprise market. And that's predominantly been our focus. And as such, we provide, our solution provides a simple, fully automated operations with clear and actionable alerts, and especially when it comes to SMBs. Alerts need to be clear, they need to be simple, easy to understand. And also the actionable alerts have to be easy to understand as far as fixing or remediating these types of events. So we focus on that speed to detection. We focus on ease of use, ease of management, and obviously automation and as best scalability as possible for the SMB market. More recently, we've adapted our solution. We have a new OPI-based technology, Optimized Packet Inspection. We've utilized that to adapt our NTD solution for the carrier or service provider market for the residential space. And then I guess the most recent development has been our partnership with Niagara Networks, where we've taken our OPI-based NTD solution and integrated it into the Niagara Networks platform. Thanks.
Excellent, Warren. So before we go introduce, Jim will start the webinar. In terms of the webinar flow, feel free to post any questions you have in the chat area. We'll answer them at the end of the session. So Jim, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Zev. Thank you, Warren. As Zev mentioned, I'm James Hanson. I'm the Global Director of Business Development here at Niagara Networks. Prior to that, I have been a field engineer for the last 30 years. That hurts a little time each time I say it, but in those 30 years, I've had the fortune to work with many of the industry's leading network and application performance monitoring, network detection and response companies, and network packet broker companies. And I've seen firsthand the value that wire data brings to security. But I also know that this can become a daunting challenge without the right partnership between security and traffic visibility vendors. The synergy between the two to greatly enhance your security posture is just undeniable. In today's webinar, I want to take what has been, for years seen as really separate enterprise solutions and show how combining security and packet data visibility into a single platform as a turnkey solution can quickly be adopted by the MSSP looking to either expand to managed detection and response services, or current MDRs looking for an advanced security solution for their small to medium enterprise clients who may, due to cost, complexity to deploy, or just otherwise not have the skill set available, can still get the benefit of network detection and response. So let's start by first taking a look at what NDR is, and more importantly, what its role is in today's threat landscape. Then we're going to discuss the benefits that packet data visibility brings to network detection and response. And then finally, we're going to focus on how the combined solution can be implemented as a managed service, by looking at a case study in the healthcare vertical. And while not planned, that has kind of become more relevant over the last couple of days. So it's a good case study to examine. So let's take a moment to talk about some of the different solutions that are really competing out there in the network detection and response space and have a tendency to maybe create some confusion. So detection and response is the core component for each solution, but do you need an E, an X, an N, or an M at the beginning is the question. You know, EDR was a needed technology that came about to sort of address the shortcomings of traditional antivirus software that was typically based on signatures. Now, this was quickly circumvented by advanced threats and offered no protection from an active attacker. Now, while EDR is the most widely deployed of the detection and response solutions, it does have some limitations. Mainly, it is typically an agent-based solution. So OT devices in manufacturing, healthcare, and other IoT devices just cannot deploy agents. Deploying and maintaining agents on an enterprise scale can certainly be challenging. Trying to cover all endpoints just may not be possible. You may have partners that you're working with, unknown customer access. And then finally, there's a lot of forensic telemetry that is consumed by the EDR endpoints that require vast amounts of storage resources. Now, endpoint and analytical threat detection and response, the latest acronym in the endpoint space, is set to kind of address that, but it's outside the scope and the topic that we'll be discussing today. So NDR, network detection and response, focuses its detection capabilities on data that's observed from network traffic that's flowing through your organization. And modern networks can present a challenge to be able to cover this. So the case for the network packet broker becomes paramount to really ensure packet data visibility, regardless if the packet is in the cloud, part of a hybrid cloud, or on-prem. XDR is the concept of bringing together a single platform that can consume both endpoint agent data and network level information. Now, this has created a lot of partnerships between pure play EDR vendors and pure play NDR vendors to be able to try to deliver the promise of XDR. Now, those solutions vary, so it pays to ask questions. Were you EDR or NDR before you became XDR? Do you rely on another vendor for endpoint or network data? Beware of rebranded tools that just are attempting to cash in on the latest acronym. So it just goes back to it pays to ask questions. Now, the MDR, or managed detection and response, is sort of an outlier here because it's not necessarily a technology, but instead it is a service solution which incorporates both technology, people, and processes. Managed detection and response was created to address the fact that there were, many great detection and response tools available, but many organizations are severely limited in both the time and talent it takes to manage these tools. Therefore, the MDR approach provides threat detection and associated response actions as a managed service. Technically, MDR can cover EDR, XDR, and NDR, but for the scope of today, we're really focusing specifically on the managed network detection and response specifically. Okay. So now that we discussed and contrasted the different types of detection and response, let's take a moment to do the same with the different types of managed services. So SIEM technology has really been the go-to solution for many of the enterprises. However, these solutions are very capital intensive, complex to operate and maintain, and can be cumbersome. For this reason, many firms have started to gravitate towards managed service providers for deployment and monitoring of their SIEM solutions. And this can be provided as a managed service of clients that already have existing SIEMs. And in this case, the customer would be responsible for both the capital expense of the SIEM and the management expense from the MSSP. The other option is SIEM as a service. This is typically going to be billed in a pay-as-you-go pricing model, and this can be an ideal option for the small, medium enterprise to really overcome some of the challenges for deploying and maintaining a SIEM solution. Now, MSSPs traditionally focus on remote device management, your firewalls, switches, routers, collecting vast amounts of log data. These may be imported into a SIEM. They may or may not manage a SOC, but the idea here is that you are outsourcing these remote devices for management by the MSSP. And while that definitely has a positive impact on skill level and maintaining employee resources, it can lead to some negative consequences that the IT staff becomes kind of obstructed from monitoring their own security posture and kind of lose an understanding of how best to respond to threats themselves. So again, it is important to clarify what are the responsibilities of the MSSP and what are the responsibilities of you. Managed detection and response providers typically part with the traditional MSSP by providing a greater focus on the threat detection and response component. They also recommend actionable responses to customers whenever remediation and mitigation actions need to be taken. And they also may or may not implement the ability to block or quarantine active attacks. So providers of MDR services can be what's either known as a pure play or product-focused MDR. If you've already made an investment in an NDR solution or wish to make a capital investment in an NDR solution, but lack the staff to effectively manage the solution, a pure play MDR may be your best choice. However, look for an MDR that has expertise in the solution that you have, if at all possible. The product-focused MDR has typically built their managed services around multiple technologies, have a sophisticated SOC with staff that are experts in the solution that they provide. This can be the best solution for clients that want that network-based security without the capital and personnel expense. Okay. So why do I need an NDR? I have an EDR, I have a next generation firewall, and I have a SIEM. Yeah, good question. You don't till you do. As a sales engineer, I've made a pretty good living selling after the breach. There's a lot less resistance during those calls. And I do not need to, I'm not trying to make light of any company's misfortune, but I just want to point out that budget cuts, staff constraints are not conducive to a proper security posture. So if budget, resources, those are something that are affecting security, the managed service provider, managed detection and response are good options to explore. So the threat landscape and attack vectors can, continue to evolve and demand greater and greater sophistication, and the ability to maintain that vigilant security posture becomes more and more difficult. What, as we said, was once able to be handled by next generation firewall, maybe a packet capture and basic SIM functionality are just not capable of addressing the advanced persistent threats of today. The security solutions need visibility at all the OSI layers, and an NDR with full packet visibility is an ideal choice. Now, I'm not saying it should be the only tool, as it should be part of an overall security posture, but if resources were limited, it would be a tough call between endpoint and network detection if I was having to make that decision. And again, this is where the managed detection and response becomes an ideal choice. So let's take a moment and look at, what a proper cybersecurity posture should entail. And Warren's going to take us through that on the next slide and give us some more insight in what that infrastructure or what that posture should entail. And Warren, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So in order to protect against all these multitude of threats at all these different layers, the recommendation, obviously, and the wider recommendation is for a full security posture is to deploy or implement a multi-layered approach using multiple components, so security components. So typically you'll find, as Jim has mentioned before, that firewalls typically utilized in the network. There's endpoint or antivirus software deployed on the PCs, laptops, whatever it may be. And obviously the network-based threat detection, NTD. And as part of NTD, packet data visibility is required, or packet acquisition is required, so that we can actually see those packets to be able, so that the NTD system can utilize that information to do the threat detection. But when we look at the different components of this multi-layered approach, there are certain limitations of some of these components. Examples of these limitations are, for example, with firewalls. It's typically protection for north-south type of traffic. So it's not going to protect your internal type of traffic. So anything that's east-west bound, that's anything internal of an organization, a firewall is typically or traditionally not going to protect that type of traffic. Likewise, with endpoint or antivirus software, that's going to be software that you will implement on your laptops, on your PCs, on tablets, etc. It doesn't protect against or for IoT devices. So IoT devices being things such as printers or smart TVs, smart monitors, smart cameras, smart thermostats, the list goes on. And these are proliferating more and more within the office environment. So you get more and more IoT devices out there where you cannot implement or install your antivirus software. So that effectively leaves those devices unprotected utilizing that type of solution. So when you look at everything then, NTD then becomes that critical component to stopgap the deficiencies of firewall or endpoint protection. It looks at all the packets which are traversing the network, and that's where the packet visibility comes into play. And then everything is then able to be analyzed, whether it be north-south traffic or east-west traffic, depending where you strategically position your NTD solution. But then, in particular, for an NTD solution, there are a few things which are sort of recommended or are critical. Obviously, real-time automated detection and alerts are required. Things need to be in real time. You don't want something that detects and alerts you several days after the fact of it happening. Obviously, ability to detect zero-day attacks, so near or near zero-day attacks, so new things. And as I mentioned before, with SMBs, a clear and actionable alerts should be provided when threats are detected. Obviously, simplification of alerts, easy to understand, layman's term type of language to be utilized to explain what the alert is, how it affects the systems, and also an easy explanation of how to fix or remediate those types of threats. And it goes without saying that threat intelligence needs to be updated automatically. The latest threat intelligence that a system entity solution has, the better it can detect more up-to-date or newer type of threats. So when you look at this full cybersecurity posture and you look at everything that all the components that that it offers and the information that these components provide to an MSP or MSSP, then that allows them to provide an advanced sort of MDR type service to their end customers. The active threat monitoring obviously is automated, especially from the entity perspective. So that makes it very easy for the MSP to provide that sort of that type of service. In addition with the automation of those type of services, quarantining or blocking or optional blocking of malicious flows can also be provided as an automatic type of service. So that leaves things such as remediation of the attacks or threat hunting. These are sort of additional services or advanced services that an MSP or MSSP can provide based on the information that an NTD provides to the MSP. So things such as metadata information, details of the alerts or the alarms, full packet capture information, all these things become tools that the MSP can utilize with the appropriate expertise to offer these types of more advanced solutions to their end customers. So back to you, Jim. Jim, you're muted.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I have always been a proponent and recognized the benefit of combining packet visibility with network detection and response, but it can become a cumbersome process. You know, the tool vendor must recognize the need and bring in the network packet vendor. And now both may want a slice of the budget or have different ideas on what an effective security platform should be built on. You know, this brings up the whole span versus tap quagmire that we will not address today, but, and pardon the promotion, we will be discussing this in detail for our next webinar in August. So if that is of interest, please join us in August. But my point being is that your NDR vendor, you know, should have a solid relationship with a packet broker vendor to assist in ensuring they have full coverage and they are actually controlling the cost of deployment, and not to mention ensuring that the tool gets the best possible data to identify threats and ensure alert accuracy. And alert accuracy, I don't want to spend too much time on, but you know, alert fatigue from needless and redundant alerts is a big problem. Many threats are getting missed just because of that concept of seeing it, ignore it. It's not a good practice. So, you know, what we need to make sure is that the SOC analysts who want to know what they see when they see an alert, that it requires their attention. So we want to just make sure that when you get an alert, it's something that should be actionable. So combining the functions of the network packet broker with the network-based threat detection of an NDR, you know, really creates several benefits. The most important is that you now have full control of the traffic and how each tool receives that traffic. We're going to expand on this when we go in and discuss our case study. But next, I just wanted to take a moment because there may be some on the call today that may be new to the concept of network packet broker, packet data visibility, and the other concepts that we have discussed so far. So I just wanted to take a moment to explain this by looking at a traditional deployment where each vendor may be using their own appliances. So in this diagram, step one, this is where the packet broker is going to implement their method for packet acquisition, whether it's via tap, virtual tap, or span. The idea is we're going to acquire that data. Step two, we're going to aggregate all that traffic into the packet broker platform. Now, this could be gigs or terabytes of data, and obviously all that data can't be sent to any one tool, and you don't want to buy a large enough tool footprint to be able to support terabits of data. So this is where the value of creating and delivering traffic via filtering so that we can deliver the right traffic, the right way to the right tool to ensure the best possible threat detection outcomes. And then in step 4, this is going to allow greater control and enrichment of the data before sending it to the tool. Some scenarios can be packet slicing if you don't need full payload to save storage. TLS decryption if the tool needs to process traffic in the clear. And even if the tool can decrypt traffic, offloading that to a packet broker so as to not waste processing gives those resources back to the tool to do what you bought it for, and that is to threat hunt. So now let's just take a moment and I want to discuss the solution, as it has been implemented by a healthcare provider, and really start to show how all of this gets tied together. So in this particular situation, what we have done is we have our consolidated solution where the packet broker is the hardware platform and the network detection and response vendor is running directly on our platform, on our what we call open visibility platform, which is our virtual hosting platform. And as Zeb mentioned earlier, we have spent a lot of time over the last year working with many security vendors, not just in network detection, but in other areas of security requirements and security tools as well. But in this particular instance, the regional healthcare provider, they needed a way to protect their digital assets. And these were spread across cloud. They had some in hybrid cloud, as well as the assets that they had stored on-prem. Now, the network packet broker aggregates the packet level data via, in this case, both passive and active taps, and we're leveraging virtual taps in the cloud to bring that data into the platform that is on site at the hospital as well. So this packet data can then be filtered by various values such as IP address, port, VLAN, application type, etc. The concept being that out of the gigs and gigs of traffic, we can filter down to really what is relevant to the NDR. Furthermore, the same data can be parsed differently for another tool such as Wireshark or forensic capture tool, for example. Now, finally, and I'm going to pass this over to Warren to talk about, how Niagara Networks and CyberAdapt combine two features: flow slicing from the packet broker with CyberAdapt's OPI that Warren just briefly touched base on previously, to really create a very powerful network detection and response that's combined the security, the visibility that is ideal for either a pure play or product focused MDR to deliver as a service managed network detection and response. So I'll let Warren take a moment to talk about the integration and the value that CyberAdapt and the OPI is bringing to this particular use case. Warren?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So the CyberAdapt solution. So our sort of OPI based network threat detection solution effectively leverages Niagara's OVP, Open Visibility Platform. So we run our complete software on the internally within the Niagara Networks packet broker within their compute resources on board there. That allows us to integrate everything into the one system and makes it easy to deploy, easy to implement, and easy to manage. Utilizing that our OPI technology effectively means that we are able to significantly reduce the amount of processing required for our NTD solution. So we utilize some of Niagara's capabilities, the slicing capabilities on the front end there, and the tap capabilities, and effectively sends us together with our OPI-based technologies traffic such that it's sort of significantly reduced sort of processing. So, for example, is that if we have a 10 gig sort of link that the Niagara Networks is connected into, What we do with the slicing and the OPI is we would reduce that amount of traffic down more than 90%. So that we need to process. So for example, for 10 gig, we may only need 1 gig or 800 megabits per second of processing within our systems. And that's why we're able to shrink that down and be able to run our systems internally within the Niagara Networks platform. At the same time, even though we're significantly reducing our processing requirements, we still provide significant amount of detection capabilities versus a traditional NTD solution. And that's the sort of the important point, is that not only do we reduce the resources, which means reducing costs and providing added scalability, but at the same time providing equal or near equal type of detection capabilities to traditional systems. And that also scales. So I'm talking about 10 gig. If we got 100 gig, definitely, then we take 100 gig, we do the slicing with OPI, and we reduce that down to less than 10% of that traffic that needs to be processed. So whichever amount of traffic on the link is being run by the end user, we reduce that significantly, and we process a lot less in that sense to be able to provide adequate or very good detection for the end user. So I guess when you look at our solution and we combine it with the integrated approach that we have with Niagara Networks, then that allows us not just to provide OPI for the residential space, for the carrier space. Now we're looking at not just SMBs, but sort of larger scale type enterprise customers as well. Jim?
Great, Warren. And I'm going to reiterate again what Warren said for the significance of that, because that key feature from CyberAdapt with their OPI technology and our ability to do what Warren alluded to with flow sampling, this is where the power of this joint solution comes into, and why we saw it as a great solution for the small and medium enterprise to be integrated in with a managed detection and response or managed security service provider. So again, as Warren said, in most situations, if 10 gig comes in, the security tool is going to have to process 10 gig. That takes resources, that takes greater processors, aka greater price. So by being able to take that 10 gig, leverage the packet broker functionality with flow sampling to reduce that down 10x, CyberAdapt for a 10 gig solution, we together only have to process that 1 gig of traffic. And of course, that scales up exponentially. 20 gig is 2, 30 is 3, so forth and so on. So it really provides that ability to fit into the 10, 20 gig traffic size, but still we're really only having to deliver the hardware solution that processes 1 gig. And this is what makes everything work together. All right. So, we talked a lot about the various detection and response options, the differences between traditional MSSP and what a managed detection and response provider delivers, as well as explored some of the technologies that make these effective security options. But I wanted to wrap up with this final slide from just kind of a purely business point of view of what are some of the challenges that we have heard and what the value proposition of this joint solution brings to not only the MSSPs looking to expand, the MDRs looking to add more of a cost appropriate security solution for their SME clients, but also it is a perfect solution as a standalone solution for any customer looking for a way to add the advanced security of network detection and response, but has previously either through cost, the scale of deployment, or just having the staff to be able to bring that in and either keep it internally or offload some of that management to one of the service providers out there today. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Zev to see if we have any comments or questions.
Yeah, we we have a couple of questions, so we can address them now. It's exactly a good timing. So the first question is, how is network visibility integrated into MSSP architecture? Is there an API or a direct feed into SOC tools? So Jim, go ahead.
No, that's a great question. So from the standpoint of the MSSP or managed detection response provider, there's two ways to do it. Most of the ones already have a very sophisticated SOC, and they have been leveraging REST APIs to pull log data from various endpoints and networking components. So we as well have full REST API capability. So it can be used to manage the packet visibility. It can be used to pull traffic or data from the visibility solution. And the same applies for CyberAdapt, full REST API. So that can be integrated directly into the SOC via API, or it could be managed through for CyberAdapt, their SaaS-based UI. And for us, we could use our network visibility controller, kind of a SD-WAN based approach to manage multiple instances of packet brokers across multiple clients.
Okay, good. Another question, which I assume both of you can answer. Regarding encrypted flows, what method is used to detect hostile flows?
So at least from my point of view, yeah, when it comes to encrypted flows, obviously if we don't have the keys, we can't see the payload. So that goes without saying. So what we do, we are able to do is look at the header information, like during the TLS sort of SSL TLS setup. We're able to look at the metadata information within the header. We do JAR3 fingerprinting. There'll be typical, and also looking at typical fields such as the SNI field or the user agent field within the headers to be able to determine if there's any sort of malicious sort of intent or malicious type of traffic associated with that type of flow. So we perform whatever's required, and we look at whatever header information, metadata information that is available to us to determine if there's anything malicious with respect to that particular encrypted traffic flow. That said, if I know Niagara Networks, I know Jim, if you want to elaborate on this, but they offer SSL proxy capabilities. So if the SSL session is terminated at the Niagara's packet broker, then obviously that will unencrypt or decrypt the packet, and then we would be able to pass the payload as unencrypted traffic, and then we will be able to see into that as well.
Right. And that is correct, Warren. So if a higher level of decryption, you need to see the entire payload and clear, then the Niagara packet broker can decrypt TLS 1.2. We can also act as man in the middle for TLS 1.3 decryption. It does require to be in active inline, but in that case, we actually are sitting in line. We take the traffic, we decrypt it, we send the unencrypted traffic to the tool, re-encrypt the payload, and put it back out on the wire. At least for 1.3, 1.2 is a little bit easier. But the idea here is if you need full traffic payload in the clear, we can do that and provide that to the NDR tool. And again, as I mentioned earlier, some of them can do it, but it's just like with packet deduplication, there's a resource trade-off that's better served by the packet broker than wasting those CPU cycles on your threat detection platform.
Okay, great. We have another question. How do you see the combination of the existing stack of EDR and NDR?
I guess I'm trying to look for, okay, let me see. So I think that the two technologies are extremely complementary together. And I think they will they will be leveraged together as they morph into XDR more and more. But as we see, the trend for the NDR vendors are now building integrations directly to be able to either through partnership to accept that endpoint data, but most are creating direct integrations to be able to pull that endpoint data and kind of starting to blur that line as to what that XDR piece of it is. But there is really no substitute for endpoint. It should be the go-to if that's all you have sometimes, but the combination of being able to have that wire data and network observability with endpoint is the, really the best possible foundation for your security posture.
Okay, so looks like again those were the questions that we had. All right, so first of all, again, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Warren, for excellent webinar here. Solution brief, joint solution brief with CyberAdapt. You can click basically on our website and access the solution brief with more description. There is also executive summary for MSSPs. There's additional area of resources. Obviously, you can visit Niagara Networks and CyberAdapt websites and LinkedIn pages. And again, I think better together.
Absolutely.
It was definitely a great synergy here from the packet visibility and again the NDR. I think again you cannot detect what you really don't see, and I think this is really the case here. To detect promptly, analyze it efficiently, and respond in much better way, especially when you have MSSP environment or managed outsourced environment. So thank you for attending our webinar. For those who were unable to attend this live session, we will distribute the recording after this call. So again, thanks everyone, and wish you all great summer vacations, whoever is going to vacations. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks
Thanks very much. Thanks.